Do you actually know who's supposed to be at your child's special education meetings and what their roles are and responsibilities are at the meeting? We're going to go over that today and hopefully make sure that you know every time you walk into those meetings what everybody's supposed to be doing and some red flags in case they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Ooh. My name is Nicoletti, and welcome to the Sped Space Podcast. Welcome back, guys. Thank you for being here. We're going to continue today with our last IEP basics, although there's an infinite amount of basics to go over. We can go over more things in the future, but just going over kind of who's supposed to be in the meeting. It's a question that I hear often that can be confusing at times. So we'll go over that today. If you want questions like this answered and more, please check out GreenwichSEadvocates.com/resources and sign up for the Sped Space newsletter, where we answer questions just like this in written format. It's a monthly newsletter where we go over different things that are going on in the special education universe, the Sped Space, if you will, and kind of recent highlights from the different shows that we have, questions from parents and other advocates and other teachers, students even, if you're so inclined, just a lot of good information. So let's jump into it. Who's supposed to be at the meeting? So first, you have the LEA, the local educational agency. And the person that represents that is typically an administrator. That could also be a special education coordinator, or a director, or something from the quote unquote district level. Basically, it's an administrator. It should be an administrator. A teacher should not be filling that role. Technically, they can, like if they have certain qualifications, but they really shouldn't be. It's someone who is knowledgeable and has the authority to say yes to decisions that the team is making, especially on like a monetary level. Now, when I say that, it does not mean that money can drive or not drive, if you will, the decisions of a team. But it's also like, what is the school capable of doing, right? Like the school can't, you guys can't decide to give the kid $1 million. Right? That's not going to happen. It's not going to be appropriate. But it's like, if we're talking about adding a communication device for a child who has, speech difficulties or communication difficulties, the LEA should know who they should either know the answer or who to contact to find the answer out. But they should be able to be like, yes, we can provide that, or like we'll have to order something or something along those lines. But like they should be able to answer those questions definitively. Also, often they'll also be the person that's running the meeting. Now, anybody could technically run the meeting, but typically it's going to be an administrator that's running the meeting. The next person that's required to be at that meeting is, surprise, surprise, a special education teacher. So this is where it gets a little weird. And this happens when there's absences, but it technically doesn't have to be, none of these people have to be like, they should be your child's teachers, but like it could be any sped teacher at that school. Now, typically they're going to try to have your child's special education teacher. But I've sat in on meetings before for kids that I don't have. And I know people have sat in on mine when, just things happen, right? Life happens, you get sick, something happens. Now, with that being said, it's very rare for a special education teacher to miss one of those meetings because it's like, we only have them once a year, especially like an annual. They're pretty important. I remember when I tore my hamstring and got a hernia and tore my labrum. It's like this. It's a very similar word. All in my hip, all in my leg, playing kickball at school, as we were advised to partake in activities with the kids. Which I have no problem doing that. It was a tragic accident. Right? That was quite funny. That felt like half the school saw, but because like they did. But either way, I could not walk. I could not sit. So I was out of school for 2 weeks, and one of my kids had their annual IEP meeting. So I attended it. I took the camera off, but I literally was laying in bed because I couldn't sit, and I conducted the meeting. Right. So, It was funny. The kids saw it, like people in the meeting saw it happen. Like it was, everybody was very concerned. And I was like, I'm good. I'm just need to rest for a little bit. But, it's very rare that they'll miss a meeting, but a special education teacher has to be there. The next person is a gen ed teacher. It could be any of your child's general education teachers. So, that sounds silly. Might sound weird to elementary school parents. But, if you're looking at middle school or high school, you're going to have a bunch of teachers. So any of those teachers. When it comes, it could be also your PE teacher or your art teacher. It could literally be any of the teachers, any of the gen ed teachers, non-SPED teachers, if you will. So typically what I advise, though, is wherever your child is struggling the most academically, you try to have that teacher in the room. Or if you have a teacher that's really good with your child, if it's like on a more of a behavior thing, I would try to have that teacher in the room because they can help inform the plan of like, hey, this is what I do with your child that works really well. Talked about this last week with the 504 and or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I forget. But basically getting somebody in that meeting that really knows your child is critical. So those are, yeah. And so I would advise, if your kid's really struggling with reading or decoding, get the English teacher in there. If they really struggle with math, get the math teacher in there. If they're struggling with writing, you could have English or you could have social studies, right? Or potentially even science with reading comprehension, things like that as well. So you can get a little bit more flexible. But typically you want to get the content area general education teacher of wherever your child is struggling or where somebody has a really good rapport with them. Those are required at every single meeting. Notice I didn't say you as the parent because you are not a required member. The school has to make a very diligent effort to get you there. So they have to work with you on the times. So if you can't make a time, you have to, you provide times that you can do, and they have to try to make it work. And they need to invite you. They need to show that they tried to invite you with 3 different forms of communication. So in a letter, in an email, and a phone call, those all work. When I worked in Hawaii, I was responsible. So usually there's a SPED clerk in every other district I've worked at. In Hawaii, I was responsible for literally the entire thing, scheduling the meetings, sending the invitations out, everything. And I hated it at the time, but I'm so thankful for the experience because I got to do it. We had to send out an email and a phone call, and then we had to write a certified letter, and we had to, they have to sign off that they received the letter, so they can't say that they missed the meeting or anything like that. Why are you not a required member, though? So if a child's annual is due yearly. Let's say that your child's annual is due, when's this is coming out. So May, I'm just going to pick a random date, May 12th. Okay. It's due by May 12th. The school has to meet by May 12th. Otherwise, that child's IEP is out of compliance. And they can get in trouble for that, for violating the child's rights, their IEP rights. So it has to be, the meeting has to happen whether you're there or not. That's typically why schools will schedule an IEP meeting like 3 to 4 weeks before it's actually due. And that's why you'll see over year after year, let's say your meeting was in May, your original IEP meeting was in May, it'll slowly start creeping back in the year. And maybe after a few years, your meeting might even be taking place in February or something, after 4, 5, 6 years. Because, just so they don't run into that trouble in case something happens and you can't meet the meeting, or the SPED teacher gets sick, or, tears their hamstring playing kickball and you need to reconvene or something, right? You have some time to do that. But they'll hold the meeting. I've been in them as the SPED teacher. We will hold the meeting without you, right? If you refuse to come, if you protest, you don't like what's going on, if it's an annual, they'll hold the meeting. If it's a review revise, if it's an eligibility determination, even then that's kind of tricky. They'll wait, right? Especially if you're the one calling it. But otherwise, you're not a required member. Beyond that, There is also typically, if your child does not receive counseling services, typically the guidance counselor will be at that meeting, especially at the middle school and high school level. If they do have counseling services, then whoever provides the counseling services, whether that's a social worker or the school psychologist or whatever, will represent that kind of like mental health side of thing. If your child requires speech services or occupational therapy services, fine motor, physical therapy, whatever it is, that service provider also has to be at the meeting. So if they require speech services, a speech pathologist has to be there. At an annual. At a review revise, again, the admin, the gen ed, and the sped always have to be there every single time. That doesn't change. And then also typically that guidance counselor or psychologist, depending. But let's say we call review revise and we want to discuss very specifically, we think that the OT services or the goals are not going as well. And we want to talk about that specifically, and that's all. We don't need to invite the speech pathologist. We don't need to invite the physical therapist. We they don't need to come to that meeting, right? So the school will generally be like, is it okay if we only invite these people? You have the option of inviting everybody, but I would also be reasonable that they're trying to do their job and work, and you take them away. You're taking them away from working with other kids. If they don't need to be there, don't have them there, right? Is it nice to have them there? Sure. If you have a question, that's great, but you can always just send them an email. If we're not making any decisions to change in the IEP, don't have them there. But for an annual, they need to be there 100%. For a reeval, the 1,000%, they need to be there, okay? So that's not an excuse. Now, roles. What are they doing in the meeting? So these are kind of like unofficial, but typically you have someone that's running the meeting. This could be all the same person or separate people. You have somebody that's running the meeting. You have somebody that's taking notes on the teacher's side of things or the school side of things. And that's pretty much it. Those are pretty much like the main two roles. And then everybody obviously reports out on their sections, right? The SPED teacher for the goals and objectives, and on the academic side of things, speech pathologist for the speech goals, psychologist for the counseling goals, social emotional behavioral goals kind of thing, et cetera, right? Like whoever reports out on the appropriate thing. Depending on the district, and even in there, it depends on the people. I've been in districts where the admin will run the meeting, and then we will decide who's going to take notes, whether that is the admin. That's like a very strong admin if they could do both. And a lot of times they do both. They're probably not speaking as much, honestly, if they're taking notes, or somebody else in the meeting is taking notes. I personally was like, I always took my own notes, but I wasn't like the note taker. But I would always take notes. I love to run the meetings. I thought I ran very quick and efficient meetings, not rushing people ever, but just like, I organized the meeting really well, and I always spoke with the parent beforehand, so I knew what they wanted to talk about. So I would answer as much as I could beforehand, and then say, okay, here's what we're going to talk about today. We went through it, Mrs. So-and-so, we spoke beforehand. You had concerns with this, this, and this. We're going to address it when we get to this part of the meeting. And then we're going to address those next things when we get to this part of the meeting. Are you okay with that? Okay, awesome. We go through it. We get to that part. Mrs. So-and-so, you know what? We did not address your question. You asked me this. Team, what do we think about it? Or Mrs. So-and-so, we just addressed the accommodations. Do you still want to talk about it some more? Or are you okay with the plan? You want to talk about some more? Great. No? Okay, no big deal. That is like, I liked to do that a lot. In Hawaii, when I worked there, I ran the meetings. I did everything. I sent out all the invitations, like I said. I organized them, spoke to the parent beforehand, ran the meeting, got the team up to speed. It was good stuff. And invaluable experience. Very much appreciate that opportunity for 4 years to really run meetings, right? It was a little hard to let that go, but what was nice is when I was back in Connecticut, I think over time, the administrators saw that I could run meetings very well, and they just kind of let me do it, which I appreciated greatly. And, the trust that they had. And it's also good for them, too, because it lets them sit back and, just partake in the meeting as just the admin, right? So And it creates a better rapport with the parent and the school because they can see that their child's teacher is the one that's like in charge, right? Like I'm like, I got you and I got your kid and we're good. I liked that. So those are kind of the two main things, which is, you have somebody that's running the meeting and somebody that's taking meeting notes. I've had a few administrators that do both. Those are rock stars. I don't know how they do both. I don't know how they do both well. Let me say that. They do both really well. And then at the end of the meeting, typically the administrator or whoever is running the meeting will recap the meeting. And that's where they'll go over what's in the minutes, quote unquote. It's different in every IEP. But basically, what did we discuss? A recap of the whole meeting that's written up and placed directly into the IEP. And then they might also go over the prior written notice at that time. I liked to do that when I was a teacher because the admin is responsible for the prior written notice, but they had us doing it. Again, very annoying at the time, but I'm very thankful I did it because now I know a lot about prior written notice and how powerful that is. And I believe I've gone over that, but we'll go over it again for sure. I'll go over that anytime. It is just as important as the IEP. But that has to be signed off by the administrator. So typically they'll do that as well. But sometimes we'll go over that. And yeah, that's so some red flags if people aren't doing the job. So one thing that's normalized, and it is normal to a degree, is everyone's on their laptops. Now, I was on my laptop, but I always shared my screen. So I had my screen mirrored onto a projector, shared in front of the room, so we could go through the IEP and see it. Now, I used to make changes right then and there, but then I had someone make a suggestion like, "Dude, don't make the changes right there." Because it doesn't look professional. Just because it's like it takes a second. I'm trying to like type and like look up on the screen and like I spell something wrong and I got to fix it and then like it doesn't look good. So I stopped doing that as much. But then I have to really heavily rely on notes and someone's, my computer's being used. So then I had to do handwritten notes. But when you see everybody on their computer, and if you see somebody that's like not participating, they're probably doing something else. I had a meeting recently. I didn't say anything, and I'll tell you why. I had a meeting recently where I was virtual, and there were people in a room, and there was the camera, and like right behind. I don't know. Put my phone on the screen. I don't have something to show, but basically, here we go. Okay, so like it was like the how do I angle this? The person was sitting here, didn't know the camera was on, and was like typing, and their screen was right on the computer. Sorry, this is not help. I just realized a bunch of people are listening to this and not watching this on YouTube. Maybe hop on YouTube so you can see what I'm talking about. Basically, I could see their screen. Long story short, I could see their screen and what they're doing. Now, I'm not going to interrupt a meeting. He was taking notes for the meeting, and he was on the whole entire time. So I was like, I'm not gonna say anything. No big deal. I would have given him the courtesy of just being like, hey, just so you know, I can see your camera. I think I let them know after the meeting was over, I'm sorry, not see your camera, see your computer. But he was engaged the whole time. But it was kind of a funny moment. But basically, if somebody's not talking the whole time, and if they're like looking up and looking at you and taking notes, like that's fine. They're clearly the note taker. But if it's somebody else, I mean, this happened, not to call out our service providers, but like it happens often with them because they're only there for like a little bit. They're not really paying attention. That's kind of a red flag. If like everyone's on their computer, not everybody needs to be editing the IEP at the same time. But if they're engaged with the conversation and they're like, I don't want to name names. It's a positive thing, but I had this phenomenal speech pathologist. You know who you are. I've worked with so many great ones, actually, maybe not, but like there was one in particular who would make the changes while we're having the meeting, right? And so I could focus on running the meeting, right? So she would go into the IEP and fix things up. So that person is invaluable as well. So that's very helpful. What are some other red flags in a meeting? sidebar conversations should not be happening. So don't let that happen, especially virtually. Those are really annoying because like the mic picks up everything. And, if there's a conversation going on, I mean, within reason, like, if the admin just gets called on a walkie-talkie and there's an emergency going on and like he's in a meeting, he's not going to be able to leave or she's not going to be able to leave. So they need to like call somebody real quick or like, go to the door and just be like, hey, can you get, the assistant principal to go take care of it? Whatever. Like, I mean, it's a school. It's still a running school. Don't be, could you be a jerk in that case? You could, but don't like let them go do their thing, and they'll be right back. You could pause the meeting if you need to, but yeah. Not too much, but yeah, this is kind of a straightforward idea here. But yeah, admin, gen ed, sped teacher have to be at every meeting. You're a critical part of the team, but they don't need to have you there, so show up. And then whoever else works with your child needs to be there. And that's the team. That's you guys. You also, how could I forget this? You could bring an advocate. You have the right to bring whoever you'd like to the meeting. You get to deem who is an expert on your child, and that's the requirement. Anyone that is an expert on your child, or knowledgeable of the child. So you get to determine who that is. If you determine that I am that person, the advocate, yes, it could be your neighbor, it could be your friend, it can be your coworker, it can be a doctor, it can be whoever. Your child, oh my goodness, how can I forget about this? Your child, they're 18, they're obviously a required member. If they're over 13, 12, they should be at the meeting. They should be at the meeting too. Oh my goodness, how can I forget that? Your child, not a required member, but they should absolutely be there. Should absolutely be there. Meetings go so much better when the child is there. I've used that to my advantage, both as a teacher and an advocate. When I have very difficult parents to deal with, I make sure the kid's there. And when I have very difficult districts to deal with, I make sure the kid's there. Because it changes the tone of the room. It's not so aggressive with each other because now we have a child present. We have the child present that we're all there for. And it keeps us focused on, we're trying to help Jimmy. We're trying to help Jimmy learn. And we're not here to fight. We're here to help Jimmy. And it really helps focus the whole team. All right, guys. That's a quick one today. That's all I got. I'm going to be away for a few weeks. I think on the release of this one, I believe so. I'm getting married. So very exciting. I'll be still recording some episodes and releasing them ahead of time. So, they'll still get released at the normal time, but I will be gone for a few weeks and then I'll be back and I'll discuss a little bit more of that. Just, fun personal experience. And I'm looking forward to that. But as a wedding gift, what you could do for me is sign up for the Sped Space newsletter at greenwichseadvocates.com/resources. You could go to the Instagram and give me a follow at GSE Advocates. You could go to my YouTube page, Greenwich Special Education Advocates, and also give me a subscription there. You could like this video. You could like this podcast, wherever you're listening to it, on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And that would be swell. Thank you, guys. Have a lovely day. I will see you guys next week.